All right. Hello, and apologies for the few minutes of delay. Welcome to our press conference on the 2023 report on human rights and democracy with the rapporteur, Mr. Sánchez Amor. Couple of words on the report. It displays the European Parliament's work to defend human rights and democracy around the world, covering current trends, which of course are not particularly positive in most places, and proposing tools to address the situation to the degree the EU can help promote human rights globally. A reminder that the press conference is web-streamed and we have interpretation in English, French, German, Spanish, Italian and Polish. And the journalists who are connected online and may want to ask questions should use a working video camera and ideally a headset in order to allow for interpretation and raise their hand and hit the speak button in order to ask the question. Now over to the rapporteur for an opening statement.
The annual human rights report, as Mr. Kyriakos said, is a snapshot of the human rights situation around the world. It's not about human rights within the European Union. That's the Commission responsibility. This falls under AFET and DROA competence. As you will know, there are no specific references to geographical areas or specific crises or specific cases. Well, some years ago, we did, in fact, break that unwritten rule and introduced a paragraph on Ukraine, and this year we will do so again and introduce a paragraph on Gaza and the situation there. Now, the idea is not to give a litany of different cases and crises, but rather to give a general overview of what the situation is with regard to human rights around the world. We describe the situation without specific references to geographical areas, individuals, or crises. And we talk about whether European instruments and policies are sufficient to try and counter the situations as emergent. Well, we have an ever-growing prevalence of anti-democratic systems, authoritarian and illiberal governments. It's hard to measure exactly what this means, but apparently up to 70% of the global populations are living, in fact, under authoritarian or illiberal regimes. Now, there's a narrative that we hear from these regimes, and that narrative is being discussed here in the report, this idea of universality of human rights. One of the biggest achievements of human civilization is that human beings, simply by being human beings, and should enjoy a certain set of basic human rights. It's not a principle that's been questioned necessarily since the Second World War. Well, the excuses that we're hearing from the illiberal systems is that they're saying that they have various different exceptional situations, exceptions, religious or others, that would prevent them from applying the principle of universality of human rights. And so that's been happening. Well, now we, in fact, do hear an alternative model from those totalitarian systems. There is an outright denial of the universality of human rights. And we're being told that the very system of human rights law is a liberal instrument of neocolonial domination, and so there is this veneer of legitimacy that's being tried to maintain by those regimes, but they are in fact proposing an alternative model, an alternative system. So we need to think about that. And we're not trying to really speed up democratization, but simply come up with. And if you look at these alternative narratives, they're coming from China, Russia, and elsewhere. We're seeing these projects being funded. China will refuse to intervene, saying that they won't interfere, but they don't engage either if you ask them about the situation in their prison system, for example. And there's also the external foreign agents law, which is difficult to manage. If any kind of agency that seeks to get information from within the country, it runs the risk of being persecuted. So this is fast turning into a cultural war. Some time ago, it was just little clashes, but now it's really an outright cultural war. Two models, two systems pitted against one another. We have the liberal and democratic system and another system that denies those principles on the other side. And so each system feels empowered to deny the principles of the other. So what we need is to realize this and defend, to go out onto the battlefield and defend what we believe in. So we need, I think this report would be important and interesting to all those working in European institutions. Now, there is in Rue Belliard in Brussels, there's a realpolitik on one side, and on the other side of Rue Belliard in Brussels, there's the world of parliamentarians, and there's the world of those who try to uphold human rights policy, which isn't, in fact, a policy, it's a legal obligation enshrined in the treaties. It's not some optional extra. It's not something that you can simply wake up one day and say it doesn't need to be defended anymore. It's a part and parcel of our external policy, and that's how we need to see it. You can't have a parliament on one side of Rue Belliard crying out and decrying these human rights violations, and the European Commission on the other side, or the institution on the other side of Rue Belliard implementing realpolitik. So all of those of us working on the human rights agenda, we need to adapt and adjust to a world where security and geopolitics have been dominating the agenda. We need to adapt our narrative to the current reality. So when we talk about human rights in the world, we're not doing this out of only personal conviction or values. We need to make it clear that a just world is also a safer world. So if you have checks and balances, you have the right to express dissenting opinions, all of that increases security. If in those totalitarian systems, autocratic systems, it's a disaster waiting to happen in terms of global security. So that's something that we need to really talk about, this idea. When we talk about democracy, the rule of law, human rights in the world, it's not just about justice, it's about also making the world a safer place. Thank you, and I'm willing to take your questions now.
Now we will take questions, first from the room. Are there any questions? No? Then we'll go online. If anyone wants to ask something, I guess you were way too clear. Yes. But if you want to add something, then we have some time. If you want to make a closing statement. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Hello, Francisco from Portugal, Francisco Araújo, 230. So my question is regarding regional level. We are our member states are part of the Council of Europe. We are not. The European Union tried several times, but it was not possible because of the court, the European Court of Justice. How important is right now, in a world of duality, as you said, to assess the European Convention on Human Rights and show that Europe, the 46 states of the Council of Europe, are united, and the European Union is focused on that?
Los colegas que tratamos con derechos humanos.
Well, all the colleagues who deal with human rights are very appreciative of the work of the Council of Europe. In fact, our political discourse, when it comes to the European Union having a legal entity within the Council of Europe framework, is something that we've been saying regularly, and there's no hesitance or reticence whatsoever. And so we do use all those resources that they can provide and their rulings and statements. one thing that we need to reassert is the alliance of all human rights organizations, and it's not just OECD, OSCE countries that carry out electoral observation. Other organizations also carry out this work. What I'm asking for is it's not enough to have just remedies to try and patch up problems. We need these institutions to engage in the ideological war that's going on and take action, decisive action. This is a battle, not some sort of one-off, short-lived battle. It's something that we need to wage in Strasbourg, in the Council of Europe, in the OSCE, and all countries that, like us, believe in the universality of human rights.
Any additional questions? No? The closing statement, if you want one.
Sí, hay un asunto que nos...
Yes. All those of us who deal with human rights are worried about something, and I'd like to say this publicly. The European Union, the European Parliament, generally put pressure on countries, and then the embassies around the world, in fact, try to deal with human rights aspects as part of their work. So what's going on? Well, there seems to be sort of an assignment of different roles within the European Union. So the European Union is there to make people feel uncomfortable. So the parliaments are doing that, making people uncomfortable, asking difficult questions about prisons and so on. And then the diplomats are taking care of the more pleasant side, trade agreements and so on. And so that's not really a fair distribution of work. So in fact, the embassies too need to be playing their role when it comes to human rights defense. It shouldn't be about the parliaments having a more ambitious human rights agenda than whilst the national embassies then do the very things that we speak out against in our reports. What you don't need is any timid approach. You need to be singing from the same hymn sheet and to say things loud and clear. Because if you don't have any clear message on all those areas where human rights situation is declining, whether it's prison conditions or others, then I think honestly, we can't say that a silent diplomacy has produced any positive results for those people living in countries where the human rights situation is declining. So yes, we have an obligation under the treaty, and we cannot tolerate a situation where the European embassies, the European diplomats are defending human rights, and the national diplomats have a much more pleasant job to do.
That the vote will take place in today's voting session starting at 5. Sorry, yeah, my brain's a bit tired. Thank you very much to the rapporteur and to all of you for being here, and have a great afternoon.